I had a heart attack in 2021. I just realized about 15 minutes into it that this could be that moment that, 3 generations of men in my family have gone through at this very age that I was at. I was 6 months from the age my father was when he died
Mm.
and his father before him. I just asked Siri where the closest hospital was, and I got in my car and I drove to the hospital and stumbled in and left my car running in the parking lot. I think a lot of people hold on to their achievements and their stations much longer than they should because there's other things for you to be doing.
Today I'm here with Thomas Droge. He is the Chief Mindfulness Officer at Tiffin, a fintech incubator where he works with leaders and teams in high-pressure, performance-driven environments. He brings more than 3 decades of experience in meditation, integrative medicine, and Qigong into systems defined by speed, metrics, and accountability. This conversation, we focus on what holds up when practice meets reality. Welcome on the Midlife Remix.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. It's nice to see you again.
I'd love to start talking about your role at Tiffin in practice and what is a Chief Mindfulness Officer?
I had worked with Tiffin as a external coach, a facilitator for their offsites. I'd worked with the founder for a long time. He was a Qigong student of mine originally. I really saw it as an experiment, and my hypothesis was, can we amplify a signal if you're embedded in a company to reach more nodes of leadership and individuals and be able to create a more cohesive culture around these concepts of presence, self-awareness, tools for understanding both body, mind, and spirit, being able to create coherence between each other and communicate more effectively.
So in practice, what do you do as the Chief Mindfulness Officer to change a culture or to enhance a culture so that there is more trust?
All of our prioritization meetings are on Mondays where we set up the week, and we do a short 2 to 5 minute meditation that's a centering practice for each of those subs. Everyone steps in and I guide them through it. But what happens is everyone comes out of their weekend with all of this stuff in their head. And by the end of that 2 to 5 minutes, everyone's completely present. And I have to say, it doesn't matter how skeptical people are. When everybody stops for a few minutes and quietly breathes together, and I talk them through a few visualizations to bring them into focus, bring them into their bodies, then into their minds, and then into their bodies and minds together, and then usually into the team. That's how I do it. It creates a pretty profound impact. I know that because over time you see the people that weren't looking for it are the ones that feed back to me how valuable it's been to them. And so with the people I coach, we get into values. Values are the most, I call them precepts because I like people to own them, like these are the things I'm going to live by, because I've said that this is what matters to me. I have them pick 5 and they focus on a person that represents an aspect. They take that aspect of that person as that value. But then I have them write a lot about it, like a few pages about it. So they really dig into every aspect of what this thing means. Usually people don't go that deep into a value. They keep it as like a guardrail instead of as like a really deep user manual tool. Then I have them write a mission statement that goes with it and then a single word. So if they think of the word, they go to the mission statement. At any moment, if they're confused, hesitating, emotionally distressed in some way, physically feeling a lot of tension, they can just check in with all their values and see if they're aligned with themselves. A lot of complex situations can be put back on track really quickly with this practice. I've also found that unless you actively, consciously track it, you don't really build that skill. So after we set their values, they have to track them every day for me. And we do it 6 times a day. And 6 times a day, they score how many times they were in alignment or out of alignment with their value, from the biggest thing to the tiniest thing. After about a month, that's locked in. They just own it. It's muscle memory. And I think that's one of the most powerful tools that if you want to build real alignment, you do that with every individual. Then the team does it. What are our team values? And that's when you really start to get into high level operation.
So you spent many decades on inner practice, right? And you come from the medicine space, and you have been you are a qigong master, um, and then you've gotten into coaching. I'm sure that your practice has also impacted your personal life. And you shared with me that you had some sudden health challenges. Your wife had some sudden health challenges, and then you had some major career shifts along the way. What stopped working the way it used to, and then what shifted maybe, and how has that changed how you think about those practices that you've cultivated?
So important. I'm so glad you brought it up. Any practice worth its salt should fail at some point after it's been working for a while to let you know that you've changed or something else has changed. The definition of life is change, right? Entropy is death, change is life. At some point, the circumstances of life change enough that your tools, the way you were using them, won't work anymore. And ideally, we would modify as we go, but we tend not to be built that way. So once we get a thing going good, we kind of stay with it until it breaks. And then and hopefully it breaks just a little bit. You get a flat tire, you don't crash into a tree. I had a heart attack in 2021. So COVID was still around. I had to close my medical practice in New York City. We had to close our Pathfinder Institute, which was our movement studio. I was living at home and I thought that I was actually really happy and peaceful because I suddenly got to be at home with my kids. I had been traveling to New York working their whole lives. And so I had this chunk of time where all of a sudden I was home with them in middle school and it was amazing. But there were bigger stressors at play that I was just keeping in the background. And I have this family history of heart attacks. So I had been very careful about it. I'd seen all my cardiologists, I had great scores, and Saturday morning before Qigong class, I was getting ready to do it online alone in a studio, feeling very relaxed, and all of a sudden I felt this tightening. I thought it was like a back problem, and so I started stretching and I got on a physio ball and I was like stretching my body out. And at some point I just realized about 15 minutes into it that this could be that moment that, 3 generations of men in my family have gone through at this very age that I was at. I was 6 months from the age my father was when he died and his father before him. I just asked Siri where the closest hospital was, and I got in my car and I rolled down the windows. I did some Wim Hof breathing because I knew that was a hyperoxygenating practice that I did, and drove to the hospital and stumbled in and left my car running in the parking lot. And and they were like, yeah, turned out I was having this heart attack and they put a stent in, and that was that. From that moment, the thing that happened to me was that all of my practices around the healer and the doctor, who's sort of impervious to disease, it's kind of like we live in the fire, so we think we won't burn. It's a really common problem with people in the medical profession. Oh, I also am vulnerable. I have to be living in some way differently because this happened. And that was actually 2 things happened in that situation. One of them was that I was in a contract, like a soul contract in my own unconscious self around what it was to be a healer. And it was that it was my responsibility to heal someone. And I always knew that I do the medicine and they heal or they don't. But there was a savior piece to that I was carrying that I didn't realize I was carrying, where my self-worth was connected to healing these people. And once I realized that I was holding that, I was able to let it go. And in letting it go, I got to have as many needs as everybody else. And I got to not be the only person that could save the day and lean on other people to do things as well. So there was a huge piece of the stress that I was carrying around fatherhood, parenting, providing, and being a doctor that got to morph into this new state. Not until that moment that I had the heart attack, because the heart attack taught me to reassess my time. That was this kind of like, glass shattering moment of like, oh, okay, this is a real thing that I have to accept. And it slowed me down. From that day on, the day after I had the heart attack, I slept 2 more hours a night, every night for the rest of my life. I slept 6 hours a night every night until I had the heart attack, and I slept 8 hours a night every night after. Not by choice, just that's what my body did. And I would find myself, because I couldn't move fast, because I had to stay slow, asking this question all the time, which was this very simple question: do I want to be doing this right now? And it could be anything, like watching Netflix, doing work, taking a walk, but it was like a check-in that just dropped into my consciousness after that. And it was such a nice way to bring yourself into the present and just do a quick assessment check. And there was a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do anymore. And there were some things I wanted to do, like ride motorcycles again. So I went out and bought a really fast motorcycle. So I think a lot of the practices shift, your awareness shifts with them. So new worldview, new practices. I handed off all of my teaching to the 12 teachers that I taught and handed off the lineage of my school. And I was like, okay, I'm done with this part of my life. I'm going to go on to these other things. And I think a lot of people hold on to their achievements and their stations much longer than they should, because there's other things for you to be doing. And maybe that's why succession planning in businesses is so important, is that you're building your own off-ramp to what's next for you, as well as building the on-ramp for whoever's coming up.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and I see this all the time in my practice, that leaders, if they truly want to lead, need to be able to step away so that others have the opportunity to lead as well, and that they can detach from their identity, because it is truly just a story that they're telling themselves, and it's not something that has to define who they are. But separating from that identity is
I mean, it's the same with parenting. If you don't have a succession plan, when your kids leave the house, you don't know who you are. It's funny, like our kids are both in college now, and one's graduating college, actually. I mean, I miss them terribly, but I have all these other things that I want to do, and so does my wife, and we like to do things together. We never stop doing the things that mattered to us while we were raising children. And we're not wealthy, so it's not about just, kick off and travel or whatever. We're still working, but we're doing things we love to do that matter to us. And that's a kind of succession planning that most parents don't get taught. So much like being a doctor, being a parent with a special needs child, there's a whole recalibration around what it means for your child to succeed in life. And I think a lot of people miss this because they say, I mean, you've experienced this and you know much more about it than I do, but my experience of it has been, because I've worked with those kids, has been people say, oh, that's so sad. No, actually, it's just different. And we've recalibrated all of the ways that we're framing and measuring and exploring and experiencing this relationship. And there are all these hidden, amazing things about it that nobody knows except the people who live in that world, right? Parents don't get information about succession planning their own lives. They just get, hey, what are you doing for retirement? If you have $2 million, but what does it say? Does it be like, oh, how do we maintain like a level of connection and intimacy as partners once this big transactional piece is gone? Or how do we maintain intimacy and connection with partners in this transactional thing that's happening while we're raising kids, especially special needs kids? It's like there's a lot of logistics involved in that.
Yeah, I think that you're mentioning a really important point, and I think it has a lot to do with that most people believe that they have to do all these things. So you're a parent, and that means that you have to make sure that your kid is 100% fine with all these things, and you have to provide them with all these experiences to be able to be whole. And then the experiences are wrap us so up and get us so busy that we stop actually to be able to pay attention, because life is so busy. And then in this phase of life, when your kids are still home. But, even when they're no longer, and, the experience that you have and I have partially, we're still caring for our children. And then we also are at the same time caring for our elderly parents. And I know your parents unfortunately had passed away, but I believe your wife still has parents. And so you have that experience too. And then then we're dealing also with our own health challenges.
Right.
And then on top of that, most of my listeners have also really big jobs.
Right.
And so you're so busy that you stop paying attention to what's important. And then you miss the beauty of life. I remember, when we first had Cade, he was about 1, and we realized that something was severely different. And my wife made me meet up with other special needs parents. And what I noticed was that they were all so miserable
Oh.
because they had not had a date. They had not been without their child for a second in that entire year. And this new experience 100% defined who they were. And of course, I'm speaking from a place of privilege because we have the financial means to be able to get help. So, I recognize that, obviously, and it's a severe privilege to have that. We decided that this was not going to be the only thing that defined who we are. And because of that, we were able to enjoy more of life, or continue to enjoy more of life.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we don't have our moments and that, that we are always present, and none of that, of course, right? Life teaches you that and you get better at that over time. But I think that that's an important practice that we can reframe the situation and say, okay, well, what's actually really important? And then deduct and take away all those things that we're doing that are keeping us too busy to actually pay attention.
I don't know what it is about whether it's capitalism or individuality, but our society's obsession with the individual and youth has put us in this place of missing out on all of these moments of just being in a larger ecosystem and part of a whole. And I think that's one of my big challenges to leaders is, can you be the instigator of an ecosystem? Can you be the gardener who plants the seeds and knows where to plant things and water, but lets the sun and the soil do its work? Let the seeds grow into what they have to become. I think in our best case scenario of the future where, like robots are going to be buzzing all around us and we're going to be talking to systems all the time, our ability to be human and connect with each other in a way that's meaningful is going to be what matters most to us.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that the only way the world makes it through the great filter of AI is through a level of connection with all human beings around the globe as valuable people. And that's what I want to see happen as well. So
You just finished writing a book.
I did.
You begin with listening,
I do.
body, emotions, and intuition.
Yeah.
Which ones of those are the hardest for leaders under pressure?
I think leaders, so the 3 states, Jing, Qi, and Shen, which are these 3 Taoist Chinese medicine principles, the body, which is your most material state, your thoughts and emotions, which are the conversion of energy before it becomes the physical state. They are a little more fluid. And then your spirit, which is like the pure energy field state, is probably the hardest to stay in when you're under pressure. The body piece is probably the hardest to listen to when you're under pressure. The mind wants control. And so we have a simple phrase, which is, if the problems in your mind go to your body, if the problems in your body go to your mind. So if I'm feeling fatigue and back pain, I'll go to my mind first and say, hey, let's look at this situation and analyze it. If I can't sleep and I'm hyper ruminating on something, I know I can't use my mind to get out of that. So I'll go to the body and I'll exercise it. I'll quiet it down. Once I get those two into a state of harmony, then I can start practicing the intuition or the Shen spirit piece, which is really about There's a concept called panpsychism, which is that your consciousness isn't localized, right? Kind of like if you were to flash a flashlight at the wall, where the beam's touching the wall is where you're experiencing the consciousness, but it's not where it's coming from. There's a theory in many Eastern systems that we're all living in energy structures that are interconnected and that trade off identities through lifetimes. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that we're in a constant connected energy system, and there's information that is outside of us, but available to us all the time. And it's, in my experience, outside of sequential time also. That's why some of these mind-altering substances like psilocybin and ayahuasca, they give people a glimpse into that nonlinear state where you're just accessing information outside of you. If you can practice doing that, and what that really means to practice doing that is first aligning and quieting the body and mind, but then trusting that this information is there and letting it come in, even though it's not going to be in any kind of sequence or form that you can easily align, but it might be a concept or an idea or a word or a person. And if you just move toward it, something will emerge that was unexpected. What if there's a lot more information around us moving through the system all the time? And if you can tune yourself to what's relevant to you, a frequency that's critical to you, you can then listen and see what comes in. And it's one of my favorite practices to bring to people because, like, there's a bunch of new studies that just came out that people are exploring how plants can, like, see and hear. Did you see this?
Did you read the new Michael Pollan book? He talks about that. It's I can recommend this book to anyone that
Yeah.
is remotely interested in the world and themselves. It's really fascinating and it just underscores what you're a lot of the things that you're saying, and we could get into quantum physics and quantum mechanics. I would like to talk about the practices letting go and working with the fear before getting to values and direction.
Yes.
And what tends to break really when people try to skip that sequence. What is that? Why do you think that that sequence is so important?
If you can't listen, you're nowhere. So if you can't listen to first yourself, that's number one. Then number two is your environment. So then it's other people. And then lastly, it's this spirit space. If I don't know who I am, if I can't hear what's going on in me, if I don't know that I'm pissed about something when I walk into the meeting, then I can't even begin to guess what's going on with you or even how I'm presenting. Our inability to perceive ourselves from the outside means that we're constantly in a state of assumption with other people about themselves and they are about us.
Mm-hmm.
And in a good day, we're like at 50% accuracy, probably often more around 20%. So if I'm not able to listen to me and be able to at least get my frequency into a very known environment, then my chances of perceiving anyone around me accurately are very, very low. So listening's first. Once that's done, then you can start to move into these other states, right? And I think for all the fear that people experience, most of it, they just either don't want to admit to themselves that they're experiencing it because of the repercussions that come with it. They don't want to admit who they are to themselves in some aspect because they're holding on to some part of themselves. That's all stuff that, like, not only slows us down in the progression of our life's journey, but also inhibits our ability to be a valuable counterpart to another person, whether it's a leader or a colleague or a partner. There are these moments that I talk about in the book where you come to a crossroads. If you're listening, you can see the crossroads coming, right? And that crossroads moment is the moment where you get to ask yourself, like, do I want to keep this or let this go? Do I want to move in this other direction and go that way or go that way? And if you're able to release the fear, let go of the attachment of identity, and enter into the exploration, that's what makes life magical. So the listening and slowing down puts you into that experience. You then find yourself at the crossroads, you then make a decision, then you build boundaries to go with it. And the boundaries don't just keep you in a place where you're protected from things on the outside, but they guide you to where you're going. Like
Yeah.
the double yellow line on a road that allows cars to go where they need to go. The boundary is not about us wanting to crash into each other. It's about us wanting to feel safe getting to where we need to go. And that's good. Boundaries should get you where you're going, not just keep you like hidden away somewhere.
I think that, a lot of people think that fear is good because it enables them to be vigilant. And the vigilance is a sense of control. And they believe that they have the ability to control. I think in reality, and this might be my opinion, but in reality, we have very little control or none. Um, and I love what Alan Watts says. He says that life is like falling from the sky with a rock next to you, and you're holding on to dear life on that rock while you're falling.
It's beautiful. I would say hypervigilance is one of the biggest things that I come across. And it's usually built on a tool that allowed you to survive under pretty extreme circumstances, whether chosen or not, right? Whether you were an Army Ranger who had to stay awake all the time out in the field, or whether you were someone who grew up in an alcoholic household and had to read the room all the time to survive. But as a tool, what happens is because it worked there, your brain's like, this works. Let's always do it. We'll always be safer. And of course, it's not true. You're not safer. You're being hypervigilant about something that isn't there anymore. And so you're probably missing the thing that will be coming down the road, by the way. But even still, you're using a ton of energy and missing out on all of this joy because you're hypervigilant.
Talk to me about what happens to the body when we have fear. Talk to me about the neurochemical aspect of it, because I think that's some of what we're talking about might seem very abstract to people, and or maybe a little bit out there. But I think when we're talking about it from a neurochemical standpoint, I think it sometimes becomes a little bit clearer.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple. Your body produces a cascade of drugs from epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol that are designed to do really specific things. So all of your blood vessels in your arms and legs and your skin shrink so that if you get cut, you won't bleed. Your bowels stop working so that you don't try to poop or pee while you're running from an animal, and your vision becomes narrower and more focused, and your senses all uptick in their ability. All of that puts you in like a narrow either fight or flight state. People are really familiar with this, right? The problem is, and I think this is also pretty well known at this point, but that can be triggered by an email instead of a saber-toothed tiger, or a phone call, or anytime that whatever's being you're experiencing like is something that you want to have control over and don't, and are uncomfortable with that. And over time, what that does is your GI tract doesn't function correctly and it starts to accumulate dysfunction. Your peripheral fingers and toes start to not be able to relax because they're contracted so much. And so you get Raynaud's or other kinds of autoimmune diseases, or you're at least inefficient, even if you're not damaged, right? And you're missing the wider view. If you were to change the way that you thought about stress from crap, if I don't get this right, I might lose my job, to remember that time I did, and you pick something that was like a high stress event that you achieved in, maybe it's sports, something where you had that experience, and you reframe your stress and say, oh, this is like when I'm that professional athlete and I've got all this like tingling and excitement because I'm about to go try and do the thing that I really want to do. And once you reframe it like that and mean it, this weird thing happens where you still get the uptick in heart rate, you still get higher levels of oxygenation, you still get all the focus, but your blood vessels don't contract and your system stays open. And if you're reaching out to other people, you start producing oxytocin. And it turns out that oxytocin is designed to help repair the heart. The heart has receptors on it for oxytocin. And so there's a resilience piece to stress that's built in if we do it right. So the first piece is reframe the stress. to this like high pressure event that you're going to perform in that you're really excited about, and really try to do that. Mortality rates change radically in your favor when you reach out for help, and this is maybe more important, when you allow someone to help you. So by allowing someone else to help you, you're not only taking care of yourself, but you're allowing the helper to increase their lifespan. And you're also giving someone else the experience of being valuable to you in a time of need, which, if you've ever been valuable to someone in a time of need, is like incredibly rewarding experience. To be able to do that for someone you care about, it's amazing.
You write about energy management as sustainability rather than optimization.
Yeah.
What do leaders misunderstand about their energy?
I mean, I think people in general, because we're so disconnected from natural systems, have lost the awareness of all the rhythms that we live in, right? So the seasonal rhythm is, well, I guess day and night are the most obvious. And then the seasonal one would be the next one after that. Even those, most people don't turn their lights off at night until they go to sleep. We don't turn off our blue screens, all that stuff. So one practice I have people do is just light candles an hour before they want to go to bed and let their mind start to quiet down, because once there's nothing to do, your mind will naturally follow the rhythm of the daylight. Cascadian rhythm, most people have heard of, which is our sleep and wake state. Although it's similar in everybody, it has different qualities of when you start and when you end. Some people just naturally wake up at 5 a.m. and go, and that's their big productivity time. Some people, it's in the mid-afternoon or late afternoon. It just depends on what your body's its natural state is. And I would say, take yourself out of work for a week on vacation. Don't bring any devices with you or turn them all off, and let your body naturally fall into its rhythm to see what it is. It's not true that everybody gets up at dawn when they're out in nature. People still have their own rhythms. So that first rhythm of, okay, when am I most energized and productive? That's when I've got to do the hard things. When am I most creative? That's when I want to do those things. Then we have ultradian rhythms, which are these 90 to 120 minute rhythms. And that's the chunk of time we can be focused on something. The average is 90 minutes. So I have people, you spend 15 kind of orienting, 45 high productivity, 15 finishing up. And that rhythm's built on the fact that extreme focus, like your brain is an organ. And just like your biceps, it's working and it's building up metabolic waste. And you have to clear it. So once you hit the threshold where you're not in that focus state anymore, now you're not sustainable, you're suboptimized. And we tend to just push through as a culture.
Yeah.
It's inefficient.
Yeah.
So interrupting those systems and following those rhythms, life gets pretty interesting. And not everybody gets to do that. But if you do have the privilege of being able to do that, and I feel like working at home does allow for a lot more of that, then what happens is you finish your workday with more energy. You feel more aligned with what you're doing, and it's easier. And you're a better person out there with your family and friends in the world, and you're more interested in things because you're not wiped out.
I'd like for you to give the listeners two things that they could start doing right away that from the book that would be impactful for them in shifting their lives.
I think the listening practice is a really powerful place to start. And the way I would do it is take a few minutes, sit down, follow your breath as it's going in through your nose into your lungs, feel your chest expanding. Notice if your rib cage moves or not. If you're taking a deep breath, see if your chest expands. If your chest does expand, now see if you can have your abdomen expand too. So breathe in and feel it all fill up. Exhale, let it all come down. And because we're such a flat stomach obsessed culture, also, there's a lot of tension in the abdomen. So learning to feel that expansion, then close your eyes. Now, what you'll notice as you keep doing this is that the contraction in the abdomen and the expansion in the abdomen are changing the pressure, and they're actually moving the lymph and blood all around the organs in your abdomen. The inhaling and expansion in the chest, not only increasing your lung capacity, your ribs are like levers that as they expand, they go up, and they're attached to your spine in the 12th thoracic vertebra of your back. And so what they do is they also open all of your vertebra and allow some blood flow to move through the discs and create some space and stretch out and open the nerves a little bit. And it's incredibly good for your spine. So just doing that and feeling the abdomen expand, the chest expand, and noticing that after you do it for 2 to 3 minutes, your body feels relaxed, more present, but also more oxygenated, a little more open. Maybe your posture feels a little more upright. That's one thing. The other thing would be look for small moments in your day where you're at a crossroads. And this is usually how I have people start to build the practice, is very low stakes crossroads moments. Like, do I want hot or iced? Do I want protein or carbs? Do I want to walk or sit? Do I want to see this person or just go home? And start building this ability to notice the crossroad as it's coming up so that you can make a conscious choice, which is all you're doing in that moment. Is like my favorite is people ask me how I'm doing and I pause for 3 breaths. And I actually decide, first I check in, how am I actually doing? Then I decide well, what kind of information does this person really want? And if I know, I'll give them that feels connected and aligned with me. Or I might ask them well, how much do you want to know? Do you just want to kind of cruise past that so we can have some other conversation? Or because there's some stuff going on, and I'll put it back to them. And what that does is immediately create a much more intimate and connected conversation. Consciously come to an awareness of how you're doing, and then either decide to deliver something to the person or ask them, well, how much do you really want to know? And just see what happens when you do that, because it'll create a much more intimate, deeper connection right away.
Thomas, thank you for your time. It was lovely to explore many of these very interesting subjects that I deeply care about as well, and that I think about all the time, probably too much. But yeah, and we'll have to continue the conversation very soon.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. I think you're quite good at this, and I really love talking with you. So thank
Oh,
you for
thank you.
having me.